Hi creative friends, this is Freya and thank you so much for being here. So I've got a little bit of a different setup today because the weather has been so crazy. So I'm right by the window in the hopes that if it goes completely dark in 2 seconds flat, I'm gonna get just a little bit of light from the window. And the second thing is that the clip on my microphone broke, so I have to hold it in front of my face, which just feels a little bit awkward, but I'm sure I'll forget about it in a minute. But I wanted to welcome you to the virtual fireside. Today I'm going to be talking about the work of Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and what I'm going to be talking about in particular is the Medial Woman archetype. Now this is a fascinating, empowering, absolutely delicious archetype, and I first became aware of this archetype through her work. It's not from the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, but it's from one of her audiobooks. And about 10 or 12 years ago, I became aware of this archetype and I was immediately drawn to it. And I actually made an art journal about the very concept of the medial woman, and it was published in Somerset Art Journaling magazine. And this was like, about 10 or 12 years ago. And while everything holds true that I wrote in my article and that I painted in my journal, I am understanding the medial woman archetype in a completely different way right now. And a lot of that has to do with me doing shadow work and mirror work and me working in my journal on healing ancestral trauma. So before we dive right into the medial woman, I just wanted to cover a couple of points. The first one is that this is my experience of the work of Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's not going to be for everybody. Everybody's going to have, perhaps a different interpretation, etc. So this is just how I understand it, how I use it in my art and my life. And obviously, if something resonates with you, then take it, and if it doesn't, then just leave it. The second thing I want to point out is that archetypes are not gendered. So even though I'm talking about the medial woman, it is not a gendered thing. And I say thing, but I understand archetypes to be energies, and they are neither male nor female. They're not young or old. So a male can absolutely embody the medial woman archetype, and you see this in a lot of indigenous cultures, like shamans or healers. A lot of them are men, or they could be women, or they could be young or old. Like, it really doesn't matter. So I understand archetypes to be they're not gendered, and they're actually neutral energies, but they embody both light aspects and shadow aspects. So let's dive right into the medial woman. What and who on earth is the medial woman? So the medial woman has one foot in each world. And what on earth do I mean by that? Well, we have the seen world and we have the unseen world. The seen world is the logical, the tangible, the practical. And the unseen world is the world of intuition, of dreams, archetypes, symbology, mythology, stories, etc. And the medial woman, she has one foot in each world, and she can go back and forth with ease. Now, her main gift is not only her deep knowing, her being able to perceive both worlds, but she's also able to translate, because it's one thing to know and it's another thing to be able to now make sense of that knowing and put meaning into that knowing, bring it into the tangible world. And how does she bring things into the tangible world? There are so many ways. She can bring them into the world through art, through language, stories, ritual. There's really no limit on what she can do. And she receives insight. She is comfortable with the synchronicities. She lives in that world of rich, deep symbology. And what she does is she gets her knowings from the unconscious world, from the spiritual realm. And she is innately sensitive. So she's an empath. She communicates with ancestral presence. So she is the main archetype that I am working with when I am working in my art journal on healing ancestral trauma. And what she does is she's a channel. Now, she needs boundaries and she needs grounding in order not to fall into her shadow aspects. So let's talk a little bit about her light and shadow aspects. So her light aspects are that she is a healer and she's comfortable with her healing. She lives in liminal spaces, and I'll get back to talking about liminal spaces in a minute. So she embodies wisdom and she grounds her vision in tangible forms. She is a steward of knowledge. She understands that she is not the source. She is simply a vessel. She is humble. She is not arrogant. She knows that she is just a vessel carrying forth messages from this world and that. She walks in between two worlds without losing her center. That is the medial woman in her light aspects. But in her shadow aspects, she can become fragmented. She can become isolated. She can become deluded. She can become confused, and she can be exploited for her gifts. So she needs boundaries. She needs discernment. She needs to be grounded. And let's talk a bit about liminal spaces for a second. So when we look at things like toxic patriarchy, which encompasses a whole lot of other things like colonialism, like white supremacy, like hierarchy, etc. Now we're going to look at liminal spaces in terms of negative connotations. So what I mean by that is, okay, let me just talk about Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. All of her work is written, or even her audiobooks, everything that she has ever done is done with the clear intention of empowering women who have been socialized and who live under toxic patriarchy. She makes no bones about that. That's written in the prologue to Women Who Run with the Wolves. She talks about it in 101 ways. So her intentions are very clear. And when we talk about patriarchy, toxic patriarchy, we are talking about things that are very constrictive, not only to women, but to men as well. And liminal spaces under toxic patriarchy are devalued. They're looked upon as primitive, dangerous even. Dreams and rituals, times of transition, they're all looked upon as either they're not important, they're unnecessary, or they're deemed as like completely, like almost like craziness, right? Like it's crazy. Like if you talk to a person who has been socialized in a very patriarchal system, and you talk to them about, like, say, the things that shamans do, conversing with, spirits and the spirit realm, etc., they are going to label that as crazy because, colonialism, white supremacy, toxic patriarchy, they look at things in terms of binaries. They're not comfortable with the liminal world. But a lot of indigenous cultures, and I'm going to talk specifically about Hinduism, the like liminal spaces are sacred. They are marked by rituals and by ceremony, and non-linear time is just a given. So let me explain what I mean by that. So in Western thought, time is looked upon as linear. It's very clearly marked by, okay, there's a past, there's a present, there's a future. But in a lot of indigenous cultures, and I'm going to talk about Hinduism specifically, time doesn't even exist in Hinduism. There is only the present. There's only the here and now. And then, even when I say, well, time doesn't exist, but then you go beyond that even, and you say, well, everything exists at once because there's no duality. So do you see what I mean? I don't want to get into a whole thing about Hinduism, but there is no duality, or there is duality, like a lot of the deities in Hinduism, they can embody both male and female aspects, or they can embody life and death. And in fact, you cannot have creation without destruction, etc. So you go beyond duality. Those are all liminal spaces. Those are sacred spaces because that's where transformation happens. That's where you get deep insights. That's where the veil between the worlds lifts. So liminal spaces are really important to the medial woman. Now, the medial woman is an archetype in and of itself, but it's also an umbrella archetype. So let me explain what I mean by that. So the liminal woman, because she has one foot in this world and one foot in another, she goes back and forth, she can embody a lot of other archetypes that say energies that live at the margins. So just say the scapegoat energy, just say the outcast energy, just say the magician, the archetype of the magician. All of those archetypes come under the medial woman because in this liminal space, so she's going back and forth between the worlds of the seen and the unseen. In this space, all those other archetypes now can be transformed from their shadow aspects to their light aspects. And it is the medial woman that can bring those light aspects to the fore. So the scapegoat archetype, for instance, the scapegoat carries all the burdens. Well, you can take that from the shadowy aspect and you can transform that into healing, into knowledge, into wisdom, into insight. You can confront those shadowy aspects, and that's what the medial woman does. And she gets all the gold. She alchemizes. Or you can take the archetype of the martyr, for instance. The martyr is a very, if you're a martyr and you are in the shadowy aspects, well, you can become, that's self-erasure. You can become so, you can become so focused on healing other people, on fixing, on taking on other people's burdens, etc., that you erase yourself. So the medial woman can go in there and she can set boundaries. She can have discernment. She can ground herself. And now you move from the shadow aspect to the light aspect. And this is what the medial woman does. She is the ultimate magician. She alchemizes. She transmutes. And the medial woman, she moves with ease. She's fluid. So these are just some of her attributes. Anyways, you guys, I hope I haven't been rambling on too much, and I hope that what I have said has made sense and resonates with somebody out there. If you have any questions or any feedback, I'd love to hear it. And thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.